Welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast. Today... Wait, did you hear that? Holy crap, it's our favorite handheld!
Welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast, the podcast that is fluent in gaming. My name is Masa, and you can listen to this episode anytime, anywhere, and with anyone. Today's episode will be all about the Nintendo Switch, and we will discuss how Nintendo went from Nintendo Doom to Nintendo Domination. But before we try to convince our buddy Arnie to buy a Switch, I'd like to thank all our listeners for checking out the show, because you guys make the podcast worth doing. And if you like the podcast, please leave us a rating on iTunes. And as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. But yeah, before we get down to business, I would like to introduce my awesome co-hosts. So first of all, we have a man, and not just any man, but the boldest man in Yukon, straight out of Canada, Paul.
Hey, my name's Paul. Yes, I have no hair, and I like video games.
And secondly, we have our social media manager who doesn't actually piss people off, Arnaldo from Virginia.
Hey y'all, mobile gaming peaked with the Nokia N-Gage, so I don't know why we're doing this episode.
And last but not least, the man who will handle all our potential lawsuits, the Brooklyn man, aka Ozzy.
I'm just here for Switchapalooza, dudes.
Oh, God.
So yeah, will you show up in Mega Man 11?
Oh, I think so. I don't know. Brooklyn dude. Anyways.
Okay, right. So yeah, I mean, let's get down to business. And okay, so yeah, today's episode, like I mentioned earlier, it's gonna be all about the Nintendo Switch. But before we actually get to the Switch, we have to talk about the Wii U. Even if, yeah, the Wii U wasn't exactly like the most successful Nintendo console. Yeah, exactly. But you kind of can't talk about the Switch without talking about the Wii U. So, in a way, the Wii U can be seen as the prototype for the Switch, even if the core idea is the opposite for both consoles. As in, with the Wii U, you actually had a tablet controller, and you had a separate, like, console unit. And the console is actually, like, streaming video, or, like, game footage to the tablet. But the Switch is the opposite. Like, you have the dock, which is, like, the streaming unit. And then you have the, kind of like the, well, in this case, it's not a tablet controller, but it's a actual tablet.
Well, so, I think the problem with the Wii U is that Nintendo could never really explain what the purpose of it was. When you look at it, it didn't make sense why you needed that. So what is it? Is it a tablet? Is it an off-screen second screen? You never could figure it out, whereas with the Switch, it makes sense instantly. It's like, okay, you can take it anywhere, and it doubles as a screen. But with the Wii U, one of its many failures is that it just couldn't explain its existence. It was really more in line with remote play that Sony tried to implement with the Vita and the PSP than with the Switch itself. And I think that's one of the many reasons why the Wii U failed. It just couldn't really justify its existence.
Yeah, like, I'm not sure if you guys remember the first E3 reveal trailer for the Wii U, but in that trailer, I think it was like, they mentioned the phrase new controller, I think it was like 14 times. And like the phrase new console 0 times. So yeah, like, it's easy to see like why people were confused about the Wii U. Like, I know that a lot of people, the Wii sold 100 million units, and I'm sure that a lot of those people thought that the Wii U was just an add-on, and they didn't need it.
Well, I feel like, Masa, maybe even if Nintendo had just come out with an improved Wii with motion controllers, I think that would have even been better than what they came out with the Wii U, because the people that you grabbed with the Wii were not people that were going to necessarily be attuned to what the Wii U was. I mean, I know Nintendo has always wanted kind of a second pillar and a third pillar, where it's like the Wii will not be supplanted by the Wii U, but that doesn't really work. And so the Wii U, it really didn't make, if it didn't make sense for gamers, it made even less sense for people that were not gamers. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought, this is clearly meant for kids, and it's kind of like baby's first tablet. And it really couldn't ever go beyond that in terms of its purpose.
That's a really good point. I never thought of it that way, as something that, would appear to be marketed towards children. But when you hold the tablet and feel it, it does kind of feel like, the Fisher-Price tablet a little bit.
It does.
Yeah, I mean,
no, it really does, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge difference. Like when you are holding a Switch, it actually like really feels like you are actually, holding a very like a
high-tech.
Yeah, like a high-tech device. Yeah. But the Switch, I mean, not the Switch, but the Wii U tablet is just like, it's like baby's first tablet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we, like, I'm thinking that there might be another problem with the Wii U that just occurred to me. Is there like a Rock Band effect here? Because like when we first looked at the Wii, we're like, holy shit, we've never seen anything like this before. It became a fad. A lot of people who didn't ordinarily play video games were suddenly playing Wii Sports. And then you have the Wii U, and it's much like Rock Band, where, we've kind of been there and done that, and all the people who aren't kind of the core gamer base for these kind of consoles just didn't support it anymore. Suddenly you have these 100 million people who bought a Wii who were like, I've already done that already. I'll just put my drums in the corner here.
Yeah.
Could that be it too?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also would go even a step further, Paul, which is that by the time that the Wii U released, people were fed up with plastic controllers. And I have to say that the Wii U felt like another, hulky plastic controller. And it's like, I keep the Wii U, tablet like on my shelf, but it takes up unnecessary space. Whereas with a regular controller, you can just put it into a drawer and you're fine. But the Wii U, I mean, the screen can so easily scratch. You just kind of have to keep it out. And, for limited space, even for something like as simple as being in Japan. In Japan, the less space that you take up, the better. And I don't think that the Wii U was practical in that sense.
No, absolutely. That tablet, the fact that it has to stay charged, plugged in, and so on and so forth. I mean, look, people do this with their PS4 controllers, right? Like they have a dock, they put the PS4 controller in the dock. I'm not pretending that we don't do this already with other consoles, but I mean, personally, I don't. And my PS4 controller has a very small footprint in the room.
I was going to say, yeah, this thing's like the size of 3 PS4 controllers.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, maybe that's a little much, but
yeah.
But still, right? Like it is something that kind of has to sit upright. It has to be plugged in always because the battery life is garbage.
Yeah, and like
and
if you compare
it
to the Switch, it's different because like usually, like for example me, like when I'm at home gaming, I usually played my Switch in like docked mode. But the Wii U, I mean it's the same. Like I mean, obviously, like I'm playing it on TV, and then the battery life is like, I don't know, 3 hours on a good day maybe.
Yeah.
And the tablet has to be turned on in order to play it, even if you're using the Pro controller, which was probably one of the biggest failures.
Yeah, that was just a really horrible design decision. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
I think the biggest failure though was the fact that the range was terrible. I mean, there's no purpose in having a second screen if you can't walk more than 10 meters from it. I mean, I realized that after I got it, I was like, oh man, this is really cool. And then I went to my bedroom and it was like, oh, signal lost. You're stuck.
I gotta say, like, fortunately for me, like the apartment where I used to live, like back in the Wii U days, it was so small that I could actually like when I had gaming night with my buddies, like we could play Mario Kart, and I could just go to the toilet with the tablet and play it with my friends. So yeah,
which really it's really the whole reason why Nintendo created this. They wanted to make sure you were able to game on the toilet.
Yeah,
I think that's closer than you might actually think. That you joke, but there
I
is
agree.
definitely somebody whose entire reason for buying this was like, yes.
Dude, I think they
Absolutely.
released like a marketing photo with like someone playing it on the toilet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but like even
I
better.
Nintendo did that?
I
Yeah,
think
but
on
even
Switch,
better,
yeah.
like this is not even a
That'd be
joke, but
awesome.
like there's a Switch commercial where you have a guy, you know, on the toilet playing Mario Kart.
That's the one I'm referring to.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Not with the
Yeah.
Wii U, but yeah, with the Switch, yeah.
with the
Yeah.
Switch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, man. I think at that point, they must have hit like the we'll try anything mode.
But no, listen, I mean, I think that the Wii U, all things said, I think, yes, it was a monumental failure, but I will commend Nintendo for trying something new. I mean, that's really Nintendo. I mean, they always try something very innovative and something out of left field. And sometimes they miss more often than not. But when they hit it, you know, they really hit it out of the park because they're really thinking outside the box. They're thinking in ways that Sony and Microsoft are not necessarily thinking. And everyone else just kind of follows when Nintendo does something that's very successful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
I mean, the thing that's really the most Nintendo thing is putting out this console with this new concept that bombs terribly and then doubling down on that for their next console. Like, no, we're going to do this again, but better. That's the most Nintendo thing is like not, you know, they fail and then they're not like, well, let's do something different. They're like, no, we're going to do this again.
Well, I mean, we saw that basically with the N64 and
Yeah.
GameCube, where the N64 was, relatively speaking, unsuccessful. I mean, it was a successful console, but really Sony ate their lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the GameCube, and it's like, you know what? Let's not go with the CD media, and we'll go with these little discs. And it's like, guys, what are you doing, right? Like, everybody uses CD or DVD media at that
Yep.
point. Like, why are you not jumping in those waters? But I mean, that's Nintendo, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Just
and it's just
never-
kind of it's kind of the frustrating hubris of Japanese companies. There's so much of it. I mean, even with the Nintendo 64, where Nintendo basically told everyone to screw off, you know, that they were just going to stay with cartridges and, you know, you can go with your CD media and fail like the 3DO. And then every third party jumped ship. It's just the hubris that just kind of bugs the hell out of me out of Japanese companies.
But yeah, I gotta say, at the same time, it's quite interesting how, if you think about, like, let's say the post 16-bit consoles, like N64 and GameCube, they were both like really powerful consoles, but they didn't do all that well.
Well, the GameCube failed. The GameCube was the
Yeah,
worst
the GameCube
selling,
was bad.
selling console until the Wii U.
Yeah,
So-
but then you have like you have the Wii and the Switch, which are both severely underpowered, but they are the best-selling consoles. So yeah, like it's.
I
really
feel like
interesting.
Nintendo succeeds whenever they do an underpowered console because they succeeded with the Game Boy. They succeeded with the Nintendo Entertainment System, which I don't know if you would call it underpowered, but certainly there were other systems that were more powerful at the time, I think on the PC market. But it seems like they succeed whenever they do that lateral thinking of just use outdated technology and, you know, use it in innovative ways. But, you know, I kind of miss the days of the GameCube when they were at the top of the line in terms of power, but it hasn't worked out for them necessarily. And, you know, maybe if they had done like CD media, they would have succeeded, but, you know, they didn't.
So yeah, here's some data about like how big of a failure the Wii U was. It actually sold less than 14 million units in, like, let's say, well, the lifetime sales. So basically 5 years. And the Switch actually surpassed Wii U's lifetime sales in only 10 months. And like I remember, before the Switch was like officially announced, and there were rumors that Nintendo wanted to, you know, produce 10 to 20 million Switch consoles a year. And even for the first year, it was like, yeah, we gotta produce like at least, you know, 10 to 15 million units. I was like, wait, what is going on? Like, your previous console didn't even sell 15 million units, and now you're thinking that you will sell, you know, 15 million in a year. Okay, so yeah, sure, it ended up happening, so I don't know. What do I know? So, yeah, I guess neither proved me wrong, but still. But yeah, the thing about the Switch was that, okay, so yeah, it's no surprise that Nintendo's profits were declining in the post-Wii and the, you know, the DS era, as both of those consoles, like, combined sold over 250 million units, which is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, due to this, and the declining profits, like Nintendo, like they actually crafted a new strategy for Nintendo, how to like revitalize their business model. And it was a bit of a revolutionary thing in a way that, like let's say every video game company, when it comes to Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, like once they put out their latest consoles, they start playing the next one. So I mean, that's nothing new, like creating new hardware. But for the first time, Nintendo actually, they decided that they were gonna enter the mobile market, and also another thing was maximizing their intellectual property, and which is smart, because if you think about Nintendo and like how strong their IPs are, like you have Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Metroid, Kirby, like you have like so many different IPs, and it's like one of the strongest lineups when it comes to like, I mean, entertainment in general.
Yeah.
It should always be their number one focus. Frankly, like that is where their focus should be all the time. Because they have the best IP. So I'm not saying Halo it and put out a new thing every year. They're also very good at, taking care of that IP. But you definitely want to take advantage of it as much as you can, within reason.
So, I mean, Pokemon Go's made obscene amounts of money. Mario Run made obscene amounts of money. I think they're doing like theme park stuff now with Universal and stuff like that. They're doing,
and there's going to be a Mario movie. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So they're definitely doing that, which is something, I think they were sort of scared off early on, because when they started the NES era, and even to some point the SNES era, they did license a lot, and I think it eventually got to the point where it started hurting the brand a little bit through failed ventures, and so they pulled back on it. But now I think they're doing it right. They're sort of spreading out and sort of using their IP in smart ways to make money for the company, but also not diluting the brand at the same time.
Yeah. If only they had done that with all the plastic garbage for the Wii and just kind of like kept a tight rein on it, but nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
But something interesting happened on March 17, 2015. There was a event where Nintendo, they announced that they have entered into a partnership with DNA, which is a mobile game developer, and that they would start, DNA would start making games based on Nintendo's first-party titles. But at the same event, Nintendo actually, they announced, and I believe that it was because they didn't, they wanted to make sure that the investors and the fans, they wouldn't, be afraid that Nintendo would leave the console market after the whole, the Wii U flop. So Nintendo actually announced that they are working on a new console, codenamed NX. And before we get to the NX, so what do you guys think? Would the Switch have become such a huge hit without the failure of the Wii U? And is the Switch popular, or is this success due to the Wii U's failure? What it meant to happen? Did this
No, I don't think so. That's giving the Wii U too much credit. I think the Wii U is a failure, and everyone forgot about it the moment that it released. It forced Nintendo to come up with something newer, a little bit faster, but I think their intention was always to create something that would improve upon the Wii U. So I think sooner or later you would have had the Switch. Everyone forgot about the Switch. I don't think people were thinking about the Wii U. People were not thinking about the Wii U when they were, interested in getting the Switch.
Is there not, though, some kind of child actor effect here, where you have the Wii, the adorable little kid, he's in all the TV shows, and then you have the Wii U, and the child actor comes crashing to the ground with cocaine
and he's going
problem.
through puberty.
Yeah, but then the Switch comes along and everybody's ready for Jason Bateman's comeback, right?
After
I don't
Wolf.
know. Yeah, I think Or like we can call it the Britney Spears effect
of
even.
of the kid that played Anakin Skywalker in like the Star Wars prequels, who later got like a DUI like 15 years later.
That kid's never coming back. I think that kid's no Nintendo Switch. I'm sorry, but like we do have a template there. I mean, I think the market was ready for Nintendo to come back. They're like, wow, the Wii U was terrible, but boy, I sure do like Zelda. I'm ready for Nintendo again. We've kind of beaten them into the ground a little bit. Let's get back on board. I don't know. I think there might be a little bit of that.
I think the Wii U is more Macaulay Culkin. Everyone forgot about him, and then when you see him,
he was way more successful than the Wii U.
Well, at least he dated Mila Kunis. So
I don't know. I think the Switch was successful in spite of the Wii U's failure, because, like I said, agree. if this was Sony or Microsoft and they put out a console like this and it failed this hard, they would never try something like this again. They wouldn't even look at a tablet controller. They would burn all the prototypes. They would chuck it in a landfill and forget about it. Only Nintendo would fail this hard and be like, no, we're gonna make this work. We're gonna force you to really like this because we think it's good, and so we know that we can convince you that it's good.
Well, Nintendo has a precedence of that, Arnie. I mean, look at the Virtual Boy, biggest failure ever, and then they came out 10 years later with, hey, it's 3D, guys, you're gonna love it, with the 3DS. So they have a history of just kind of repurposing their past failures into something new.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite interesting how, I would say it's interesting how, like, they knew, like, fairly early on that the Wii U wasn't gonna take off. And then 2.5 years later, they already announced, or they mentioned that they are working on a new console called the NX.
Yeah, my enduring memory of the Wii U will be Reggie Fils-Aimé, and I think it was like the Video Game Awards of 2013, which no one watched. And they kept on waiting for him to announce some Zelda news or something like that, or even like a new console. And he just kept talking about Tropical Freeze, and no one cared. And Tropical Freeze is a great game. But,
yeah, like the big announcement was Cranky Kong.
Yeah, you get Cranky Kong, guys.
Yeah, imagine, like last year, they announced Bayonetta 3, and then, for the Wii U, it was like, hey, here's Tropical Freeze and Cranky Kong, yay!
Yeah. It was a very uncomfortable and awkward time for Nintendo and the executives, because they knew that they didn't have on their hands what they needed to make it succeed. Yeah. And they just had to, like, twiddle their thumbs and be like, Cranky Kong, guys! You guys remember him?
Okay, so yeah, Nintendo actually, like, they put out, like, very little information about the NX. But it was mainly, like, they wanted to come up with a new way to play video games. And also, it was a brand new concept. And one thing that was mentioned was the whole, like, blue ocean approach. And, like, I found it a bit curious, because I was a bit like, okay, so Nintendo will release kind of like a mid-generation console. So I was like, okay, so since the Wii U failed and, the Wii U was underpowered, like day one, it was an underpowered console. So I was like, okay, so maybe they will actually release a very powerful console, like something that's gonna, compete against, like, let's say, PS4 Pro, and the upcoming, the more powerful Xbox console. Yeah, but then they mentioned the whole Blue Ocean thing, and I think it was like Reggie himself who was like, we are not gonna, directly competing against Microsoft and Sony, but like we are trying to create an entirely like new market for the Switch. And then Shinya Takahashi said that we feel like we are an entertainment company rather than necessarily a games or a graphics company. So, like, how did you guys feel about like these comments, and what did you think that the NX was going to be like?
I had no idea, and frankly, with the demise of the Wii U at the time, I didn't care. I was just like, you know what, I'll see it when I see it, and if I think it's interesting, then I'll buy it, which I did. But like at the time, no, blue ocean approach. I don't even know, like, what is it? Ice cream approach, steering wheel approach. Like they could name any kind of noun, and cute puppy approach. It's all meaningless, right? But hey, Nintendo, if that, like, the one thing that I can take from that announcement is the whole we're not competing with Microsoft and Sony, that I'm on board with. Like, you guys have to swerve. You have to do something a little bit different, because, you know, those companies, they have a whole bunch of other departments that they can borrow money from for R&D that Nintendo can't. So to compete with them on a technological front, pointless. So, hey, you know, hats off to Nintendo for making that decision. Obviously the right move.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was much like Paul. I didn't get a Wii U. I never bought a Wii U. So Nintendo was not at the forefront of my sort of gaming life at this point. And I really didn't know what to expect from a new console. I was hoping that it would not be like a Wii U Pro or something like that. I did not want them to do some mid-generation thing, because I thought, you know, you already know this doesn't work, so just refocus on something new that you can pitch in a couple years and just ride out this sort of rough patch on the back of strong 3DS sales, because Nintendo's owned the handheld market for like 30 years at this point. So that's always been like their big backup for whenever things don't go so well on the console front. But yeah, these, you know, I didn't know what to expect. I was hoping that it would be something innovative. Obviously, because like Paul said, Nintendo, the fact that they had to come out and say, like, we're not going to be competing with Sony and Microsoft, I was like, I feel like you haven't been doing that since the Wii, pretty much. The Wii was completely, you know, left of center of what Sony and Microsoft were doing. So the fact that you have to come out and say that we're doing something different, you're currently doing something different. So just keep doing that, but make sure that, you know, you sort of refocus and make a system that actually works for gamers and also for casuals, like the Wii did.
Yeah, by this point, I hadn't bought a new Nintendo console since the Game Boy Advance. Mm-hmm. So it had been a while. So for me, Nintendo was just an afterthought at this point. So I always wanted them to succeed, but I was so frustrated with them for so long with their hubris and their just kind of completely unintuitive way of doing business, that I just didn't care. But so when I thought about the NX, you know, I thought, well, maybe if the Wii U is such a big failure, they can finally get this right, and they can finally just give fans what they want, which is, you know, just give us a not necessarily a traditional system, but one that doesn't feel like a gimmick. And I just wanted them to do that. Just don't make it feel like a gimmick, which I felt like that was the whole case with the Wii and the Wii U, and even the 3DS to a certain extent, even though you could turn off the 3D effect. But, you know, there were some rumors around the time that there was going to be kind of like a console portable hybrid. And I was fine with that, I guess, but I was worried about how that was going to work, because it worked so poorly with the Wii U. So I don't know, but I just really, when I thought about the NX, I was just like, you know, Nintendo, just give us something a little bit more traditional. I just want you to put your games in a platform that I don't feel uncomfortable playing.
Yeah, I would say, like, okay, so I'm a huge Nintendo fan. I actually enjoyed the Wii U. I mean, there's a lot of like truly great titles on that system. I mean, of course, hardware-wise, it's a bit shitty. Not gonna lie, and not even a bit shitty. Like, I mean, it's horrible. But like with the NX, basically my dream Nintendo console at that point was like, I wanted something, like I wanted a powerful Nintendo console, like let's say like a very traditional console, but with an additional like handheld device. Kind of like what Sony tried to do with the PS4 and the PS Vita, but like something that would actually like work. Okay, so with the Switch, I didn't exactly get that, but I kind of feel like, once again, like Nintendo's approach was probably better than like what would have been like my dream console. That's
pretty safe to say, given the success of it. Yeah.
But yeah, then the rest of the 2015 and the beginning of 2016 was quite slow on the NX front. Nintendo did say that they were going to talk about the console in 2016, and of course, a lot of people, me included, expected that E3 2016 would be like the big, Switch body, or well, the NX body, that the console would be, revealed. We would get like all the, new information and games. And we actually, Nintendo did mention before E3, that Breath of the Wild was going to be on both the Wii U and the NX. But then they also mentioned that the NX would not be present at E3.
Which, Masa, it kind of shows you how little faith Nintendo had in the Wii U, where it was like, all right, guys, we need to really push back Breath of the Wild so that it falls in line with the Switch release.
Yeah.
Because this is not going to work out if we release it on the Wii U first.
Yeah. And the reason why, like Shigeru Miyamoto stated, that the reason why the NX was not going to be revealed at E3 was that they didn't want to reveal the system too early, as they were afraid that the competitors would copy like the concept of the NX.
And here's the thing, is that obviously there is precedent for, Nintendo feeling like other companies would copy them. I think the Wii and the motion controls sort of prove that. That, other companies were willing to try stuff after Nintendo did it. But to be... You're sitting on what is the worst console you've ever made sales-wise, and you're still coming out here and talking like, no, we can't show this off yet because, people might try to steal this idea. Like, I love it. That is the most Nintendo thing ever. Like, you are down as down can be, but you're still so confident in yourself. It's great.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's like the sixth player off the bench on a basketball team, and he's like, I should be starting. I'm like LeBron James. You guys are the worst.
I'm about to be like the league MVP here.
You're saying Nintendo is J.R. Smith. That's
yeah. Oh, God. Pour one out for J.R. Smith in the past.
Oh, Lord.
I thought we were ahead, guys.
Yeah, but no, that is just such bravado. Like, especially from like a Japanese company like Nintendo that's so old and so traditional. To think that, Microsoft and Sony are going to turn around from what they're doing that's just making piles of money to be like, no, we definitely, all hands on deck, we're going to copy this new Nintendo console that we have no idea if it's going to be popular or not.
Oh, it's awesome. I love it.
So yeah, E3 2016 ended up being all about Breath of the Wild, and like personally, like I remember, because I'm a huge Nintendo fan, so I was like really looking forward to the E3 prior to the whole announcement that the NX would not be there, and after that I was a bit like, wait, what? We are just gonna get Breath of the Wild? And I know that sounds really messed up because just gonna get Breath of the Wild. Like the long-awaited new Zelda game. And somehow, it's interesting in retrospect how Nintendo, like, they didn't really show, like, they showed, like, hours and hours of footage. Like, they had the treehouse thing, and, they were playing playing Breath of the Wild, but they didn't actually, like, show much. Like, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 hours of footage, but still... Yeah. And at first, like when, like I remember, like still remember the first time, like they showed the first like full trailer. I was like, oh my god, that game looks amazing. But then after seeing like 5, 6 hours of gameplay footage, I was a bit like, okay, so is that all? Like you are just hunting boss and going like you're in the middle of the woods and doing that like. I don't know, you go camping and stuff? I was like, yeah, what is this game? Is like camping simulator or something?
Gosh, it's so funny that you put it that way because I didn't look into it as deeply as you, and all I saw was the trailer. And that trailer was magnificent.
I mean, it looked gorgeous.
Oh my god. And it was produced perfectly, and it was the first time, I remember like after E3, it was actually the first time that I actually started following what was going on with the Switch development or the NX. I don't remember when they actually called it the Switch. I think it was later in October when they did the Direct. But
exactly.
That was the first time where I'm like, oh, okay, this is something I should now pay attention to. I didn't actually watch the hours and hours of footage. Perhaps if I had, it would have tempered my enthusiasm a bit. But they really hit it out of the park with that trailer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would have to agree. And I remember like the first time I saw the trailer, I actually got a bit emotional. I was like, oh my god, like the new Zelda game is finally coming out. But at the same time, like once they started like rolling out all the footage, I was a bit like, why are they showing this game on the Wii U? Like, wouldn't it make more sense to show it on their like new console? Like, what is this? And at that point, I was still expecting, okay, so the Switch isn't like significantly more powerful than the Wii U. And of course, Breath of the Wild was originally a Wii U game. Mm-hmm. So at first, I kind of expected the difference between the Wii U and the NX versions of Breath of the Wild to be a bit more. But yeah, I mean, like now I understand that it didn't really matter. It was just about the game, and not about the NX. Not yet.
I mean, at this point, they know that a new console's coming, but Nintendo's, trying to keep people who have Wii U's on the Wii U, and if they can get, a few more 100 Wii U sales by showing off Breath of the Wild on the Wii U, then so be it, So I think that might have been part of the reason why they didn't want to focus too much on the NX, because the Wii U's still out on the market. They don't want people to necessarily forget about it completely at this point, because they're still going to be putting out stuff in the meantime, and they want to keep their base satisfied, as small as it is.
I disagree, Arnie. I think that they have forgotten about the Wii U at this point. I mean, the only big release up to that point then was Paper Mario Color Splash. That was like the only release of 2016. I just think they were biding their time until they could actually show it off.
Yeah.
I don't think it was really about, increasing sales for the Wii U. I think they just completely didn't give a shit about the Wii U at this point. I don't know. That was my impression.
Why don't you tell me how you really feel about the Wii U, Ozzy? I feel
like... Not how I felt, how Nintendo felt.
But yeah, I think it's time to take a little break, but yeah, we will be back soon. We are back. So, I personally followed like everything Switch related like really closely, or well, NX related. As a huge Nintendo fan, and what makes like new Nintendo consoles always like more appealing? Like, don't get me wrong, I love Sony's consoles, and Xbox is cool too. But the thing about, like, we already know like what the PS5 will be like. It's just gonna be a more powerful version of PS4. But with Nintendo consoles, you never know like what's coming. So I personally I followed every possible rumor. But then there was like one leak, and like during the summer of 2016, I think it was like a few weeks after E3. Eurogamer, like the website Eurogamer, they reported that the NX was going to be a hybrid console based on mobile technology, and it would have detachable controllers. Personally, I was a bit like, yeah, this is not exactly like what I expected.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you guys follow the NX rumors at all?
I think that I may have heard that Eurogamer leak just through following like news sources and stuff. And the words mobile technology and game
strike fear into your heart.
Conjure to mind what is the greatest portable system of all time, the Nokia N-Gage. But in reality, that was sort of a scary proposition, because I wasn't sure whether they meant that it was going to be like I get the concept behind a portable and a hybrid console of that type, but because I'd never seen one before, I was like, what is this going to look like? Like, how is this going to work? And so, obviously, when you say mobile technology, I'm thinking like, well, clearly this isn't going to be like top-of-the-line 4K video stuff. But you would hope that it'd be up to Wii U standards. It just made me nervous because I was like, I don't know how they're going to pull this off.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And I was someone who, at that point, I had already like pre-ordered the NX. Like I know that in a lot of countries, like you can't actually pre-order things until they are like officially revealed. Mm-hmm. But in Finland, I think I pre-ordered the NX. It was like maybe spring 2016. And when I saw that like Eurogamer leak, I was like, to be honest, I was disappointed. I was like, cause they did mention that it wasn't gonna be very powerful, and I was like what the hell? Like, Sony will be releasing the PS4 Pro in a few months, which is gonna be like a monster console. And Microsoft had mentioned something that they, wanted to do like a mid-generation, more powerful mid-generation console, and then Nintendo is gonna release like a souped-up version of the Wii U. I was like, yeah, what the hell? Like, how are they gonna pull it off? Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah, I remember initial reactions to the Switch, like before it came out, being very mixed. Like some people just not being on board at all.
So I think, I follow Eurogamer pretty religiously. So of course I kind of knew about the rumors, and I was a little bit worried because I heard that it was going to be based on NVIDIA.
Yeah.
What was that handheld console that NVIDIA released? The Shield?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was a little bit worried about that because that really told me that it was going to be a very underpowered console. But, I guess it succeeded, so, who knows?
The next part, we are finally, like, the Nintendo Switch will finally be revealed, and it happened on October 20, 2017, when Nintendo posted a video called First Look at Nintendo Switch on their YouTube channel. And first of all, what did you guys think about the trailer?
I hated the name, and also I felt, to be honest, like, everybody's made fun of this trailer, I think, to a certain degree, especially because the way that they marketed it was very different from the way I think they'd done things before, but I think it was the right way to do it. It was clearly not focused on children, because the entire commercial is just young adults to adults, using the Switch in its every configuration it can go. And I thought, for what it was, I thought it was successful. I thought it was a little ridiculous that Nintendo expected people to, like, show up to parties with this thing and, like, start playing Mario Kart or whatever. But, that's kind of happened. So, again, what do I know about anything?
Yeah, dude, I couldn't agree more. Like, no, it's true, right? It's equal parts ridiculous and effective, right?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous because, like, I see... And dude, I've made fun of these Nintendo hipsters in these commercials now several times on this podcast, but I'm looking at them and I'm like, this is completely unrealistic. These people are way too good looking. None of them has ever touched McDonald's in their life. And they're playing this console, like, let's be honest, this isn't happening. But at the same time, like, it's super effective, right? Like, it's not kids playing these things anymore. And again, I'm just repeating myself here. As ridiculous as it was also very effective, and it was definitely like the right direction for them to go, in my opinion.
Well, I feel like that's something that almost every developer that has tried something like this has done. Have the commercial with the cool hip kids, testing it out on the basketball court and the like. And I think that, yes, it was ridiculous, but for the first time, I think the Switch actually kind of, pulled through with that. It actually achieved that vision because, I'm not the first one that can tell you that I could actually take my Switch anywhere and just bust it out and play Overcooked with my friends, which I have done. Even recently, I was on a trip to Florida and we were, going to Disney and the like, and my brother's wife is a big Overcooked fan. And so we could just bust out the Switch and play it on a screen or put it on the big screen and just play it with, 4 people.
Yeah.
It's the first time, when you saw it with the Vita, for example, where Sony had this commercial of the person playing at home and then taking the game to go. That's complete bullshit. You're never gonna have something like that. Even with the 3G that the Vita came with, if you opted for that one, it just never worked like that. But with the Switch, it actually does, and the big difference is that the console is built in to the portable. Yeah. So that's I think the big defining feature, that it can run independently of any streaming service or any type of data that you would need to stream.
Yeah, and I mean the moment in the trailer when the guy puts the puts the system in the dock and it just shows up on the TV, that was impressive. I was like, that seems like legit. If it's actually that quick of transfer, because like he puts it in and immediately shows up on the TV. I was like, if they actually do it like that, where it's not like a loading screen or it's not like it takes a second to go, that's pretty freaking cool. Like if I can, seamlessly transition from sitting on my couch playing a game to going, to the airport or outside or wherever, and I can bring that with me and not have to worry about, transition effects. That's pretty legit. The second concern obviously is battery life, which was not addressed there, but you take what you get. I thought it was pretty effective, and that little logo and animation at the end with the sound effect, that was beautiful. That was a master stroke.
That click sound is so satisfying.
Yes.
And I really love it, like how nowadays, whenever, you go on the eShop or, you check out like Nintendo's YouTube channel, and in front of like every trailer, they have that little like Switch animation.
I have like a secret theory that is sort of like a Pavlovian thing where they've sort of conditioned us to be excited for things when we hear that noise. So now every time you hear it, you're like, oh my God, what is that? That's just my theory about Nintendo.
No, I really agree, actually. Like, that little sound is, not something we've heard before. It's got a very satisfying little clicky thing. Yep. And yeah, they definitely want to associate that with the brand, I'm sure. And
it immediately just teaches you, like, how this is going to work, right? How the controllers detach, how they attach, how the dock goes into the system, how it comes out. So it just teaches you, like, even before you've held it in your hands, you're like, this is how you do it. This is what it's going to sound like.
And yeah, I mean, if you think about the marketing, I feel like even if the reveal trailer was a bit ridiculous in, like some record, but like overall, if you think about it, like compared to the Wii-U reveal, like it's kind of like what Reggie Fils-Aimé said. Like he was like, yeah, the goal with the Switch reveal was like to be crystal clear in our communication of what the product was and what the product could do, and like right away what the console is gonna be like. Okay, so yeah, sure, you don't have like all the details, but like they show, there's a guy playing Breath of the Wild on TV, and then he just, grabs the Switch and, goes to the airport, and then, you have a guy playing Skyrim during a flight, and then, okay, so a lot of these things, they probably happen. Like, I mean, I have played... I have had those airplane, Switch moments, kind of like in the trailer, like exactly the same, except I wasn't playing Skyrim, but still, but I haven't had a rooftop party with hipsters playing Mario Odyssey.
Masa, you're not having rooftop parties every weekend?
No, unfortunately not.
Clearly, you're not the target demographic for this.
Yeah,
system.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe I should just GameStop my Switch. Yeah, it's not for me after all. But yeah, I mean, I think the trailer was like really well made, and they really nailed it. And also, I think the name. Okay, at first I was a bit like Nintendo Switch, like that's.
Yeah.
I guess I had a bit of an Arnie moment there, but still, I mean, the name makes sense.
Yeah, and I think at least in my experience, I'm not used to seeing Nintendo commercials. Like we saw, they had that one ad campaign for the Wii, which was pretty successful. I do not recall seeing much of anything for the Wii U. But with the Switch, it seemed like they really pushed that sort of stuff. They were like, we're going to do a bunch of TV commercials. And I've seen a bunch of marketing for the Switch, like all over the place from like prior to inception until now. I'm still seeing like, TV spots and billboards, or not billboards, but like, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? like just signage and marketing for it going on constantly. And I think that's a big thing where Nintendo is just like, we're going to keep this in people's minds all the time. We're going to make sure that people know about this and that, you know, they sort of want to get in on it. Because when your friends are doing it, you're going to want to do it too.
Well, it's a different environment also. It's a different environment that you're in now because everyone is gaming on mobile devices.
Yeah.
And so you really have to adopt a new strategy in order to be able to get people hooked. And for kids that have grown up with tablets, you really have to let them think that, okay, this is the next step up. This is what you really want. I mean, the tablet is nice and all, but this is the console that you really need to get if you want to get a real gaming experience.
All right, so Nintendo actually went silent after the Switch reveal for a few months. Like they, you know, gave us the trailer. They gave us like some little tidbits, but then they were like, okay, so we will have a big reveal event in January when we will, you know, reveal the launch lineup. We will talk more about the hardware. We will talk about pricing, and then finally, they had an event in January. Yeah, what did you like? Did you guys watch the reveal event, and how did you feel about the console after the event?
Well, personally, I thought the reveal event was like a huge success, and I pre-ordered the console shortly after that. The fact that Zelda was going to be a launch title actually really just kind of sold it. Breath of the Wild, I thought the hype for Breath of the Wild was gaining a lot of momentum. And personally, I got swept up in it. Pretty good event as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and the Breath of the Wild, like the January event trailer, that was like magnificent. Like one of the very best video game trailers that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, no, I you know, in terms of the January event, I mean, I didn't really, you know, it didn't propel me to buy the Switch like Paul. But it definitely made me interested in how it would work, actually. So at the very least, I put on my radar that this is something I wanted potentially in the future. But I don't think that it made a huge difference for me. But I was just glad to see more information about it. And one of the things that I really liked was that from reveal to this event to actual release was going to be a very short amount of time. And I always like it when developers and publishers do that, when, you know, they just release it, you know, within a few months of it being announced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's actually interesting how basically, like the Switch was revealed on October, like late October, and then released, like early March. And that basically like never happens with consoles. And especially like if you think about how, okay, so yeah, the reveal happened in October, but then like was like around mid or late January, they finally like announced all the details, like the launch lineup, the pricing and stuff. And then it was like, okay, so yeah, the release date will be March 3rd, like a month and a, you know, half later. So that's something that never really happens nowadays with consoles.
No, companies want to start building hype as much as, like, as far back as they possibly can. It's unheard of for there to be some kind of announcement, you know, 5 months before and then 3 months before. That's virtually no time to build steam. But I mean, that's conventional wisdom, right? Where you build it up over a long period of time. Maybe a shorter hype train is better because you don't get burned out on it, right? Maybe they got it right. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least the console has been selling, so yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they pushed it with the marketing like we talked about before. They had a Super Bowl commercial, so I mean, there's probably no better way, at least in the United States, to build up. There's probably no bigger marketing opportunity than the Super Bowl. So the fact that they went and put the money into it to actually get it out there probably reached several, million people. So I think that they balanced out the short window by really putting the money into the marketing and really accelerating it that way.
And they're finally like spending money on marketing like a modern video game. Yeah, modern company should do. Like they finally understood that they can't just, release a console and then, hey, we have a game coming out in a few months and that's it. Like they actually like have to, put the product out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, about the reveal, it was revealed that the Switch actually is not that much more powerful than the Wii U, and it's even less powerful than like the base Xbox One. And if you think about Xbox One, like like that console, it's not exactly like a monster console. So of course that raised some concerns, at least for me, because I was a bit like, will they like really, even after all the comments about like how it's like very easy to develop games for the Switch, but I was still a bit like, what about the difference in power, like the horsepower, like what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm in the minority on this, where I'm kind of tired about hearing about horsepower in video games. Like, I think we've reached the point now where the artistic vision in the game matters more, and we have the hardware in the Switch and anything more powerful to achieve that, right? Like, don't get me wrong, like, it's really cool to see the trailer for The Last of Us 2, for example, right? Like, looks absolutely incredible. And that's all well and good. But if The Last of Us 2 as a game ends up sucking, no amount of graphics is going to save that. So, the fact that the Switch is underpowered, I don't care. I just want good games. Yeah. And if it comes in a factor that's portable and can be used as a home console, all the better.
Yeah, and I think that Breath of the Wild is a perfect example of that. It's not really a technical powerhouse. And it's more about artistic direction rather than graphical power.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, now that you mention it, Paul. I love The Last of Us 1. I am very uninterested in The Last of Us 2, despite how good it looks. And I think that's a very common refrain. But I think, as you said, Paul, it's better now to just focus on delivering innovative experiences and exciting new experiences rather than trying to push the graphical envelope.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And like for me nowadays, if you have a third-party game that is out on both, like let's say on the PS4 and the Switch, most likely, okay, so there's been some examples of the Switch games, like the Switch port might have a very bad performance. Like I don't really care about the graphics, but of course, I mean, if there's a game that's like 60 frames per second on PS4, and then, the frame rate is like 15 on the Switch, then, I mean, obviously, like, in that case, I would go for the PS4 version. But in most cases, what matters to me is that I can choose how to play the game. And I have already noticed it that there's actually a lot of games that I would rather play in handheld mode. And then, I mean, of course, some games are absolutely like more like home console experiences. So yeah, like at least personally for me, it's more important, like not the graphics, but as long as the game is performing well, I mean, that's enough for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so my next question is that, because this is like one of those, and Nintendo has done polls about this, but for you, is the Switch a home console that you can take with you on the go, or a portable console that you can play on the TV? So, Paul, what do you think?
I think it's a home console I can take with me. Like, it doesn't... We're at the point... Like, in 3 or 4 years, it's going to feel like a portable console that I can play on my TV, just because the technology is going to be more dated. But right now, the games look good enough and so much of a step up from the 3DS, for example, that this actually feels like a home console that I can pick up and take with me, to the bathroom, realistically.
Let me just put it this way. I don't care, and that's a good thing, because it means that you can use it either way. And so that's why I can say I don't care whether it's one or the other, because they both work just the same.
Yeah. Like, I would say personally for me, like, okay, at first I was a bit like, I mean, what's the difference? Like, for example, the PS Vita has very, decent graphics, and the Vita got, big titles like Uncharted and so on. But then when I first played Breath of the Wild in handheld mode, I was like, holy crap, like, this is nothing.
It's next level.
Yeah, I mean, it's next level. And the most important thing is that, like, game developers, like, they don't have to compromise. Like these are, like, legit home console games that you're playing on basically a mobile device.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now we are getting to the launch of the Switch, which happened on March 3rd, 2017, and like I mentioned earlier, like I had my console pre-ordered like well in advance. Paul, didn't you get the console at launch as well?
Yeah, I pre-ordered it. I got it on launch with Zelda. No regrets.
Yeah. But one thing that kind of disappointed me, like I remember like when they had the January reveal event and they, announced the launch lineup, and I'm gonna list the games that were available at launch. Of course, yeah, you had Breath of the Wild, you had 1-2 Switch.
Yeah.
1-2 Switch.
Yeah. You had a Skylanders game. I'm not sure if that was a pod or if it was a, unique game for the Switch. I have no idea. You had, just another Just Dance game. Okay, so one game that was like fairly interesting, Super Bomberman R. It was cool seeing Bomberman coming back. And then you have
it was cool Konami releasing games at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like an actual video game and not a pachinko machine. And then you had a few, you had like Snipper Clips, Fast Remix, I Am Setsuna's, like digital games. But I remember like when they had the event and they announced the launch lineup, I was very disappointed because I was like really ready to like put some money down and, order a few games. And then I saw the lineup and I was like, yeah, I mean, there's Breath of the Wild.
And then what?
Yeah, and I was like, Bomberman could be cool, but like, I don't know, fuck Konami and all that. Can't help it. But
let me just put it this way, though. I mean, it's a very similar lineup to what they had with the Nintendo 64, which had Super Mario 64 and Pilot Wings.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a dig against Pilot Wings, but it was literally the only game you could buy.
Yeah, exactly.
And it really is a testament to how important a great game is to a launch console. Mm-hmm. Because when you really think about it, the GameCube didn't have a killer game at its launch, and the Wii U didn't have a killer game at its launch. But guess what? The Wii had it with Wii Sports, Nintendo 64 had it with Mario 64, Super Nintendo had it with Super Mario World, and the Nintendo had it with Super Mario. So it didn't matter. It didn't matter at the end of the day because you had Breath of the Wild, and even though that was already on the Wii U, you could play it on the Switch, and that's what literally, I think the attach rate was like 1-to-1. Like every person that bought a Switch bought Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, actually, at its highest, I think it was like the attach rate was like 102%.
Yeah.
Like some people who didn't even buy the console.
So they just bought like two copies.
They bought the
pretty
game.
much.
Yeah, like, I mean, because I know that in a lot of places, like, like, couldn't even buy a Switch because, there were stock issues, but then, people bought the game. Yeah. So, that was insane. And, okay, so, Breath of the Wild, of course, like, the other games aren't really, like, worth talking about, especially not 1-2 Switch, which I unfortunately ended up buying because I got caught up in the launch hype, and I was like, I want another game.
Yeah, I mean,
even
the fact
if I knew
that 1-2
that,
Switch wasn't just a pack-in that's
should have been
nickel and dime shit. Like, Nintendo really should have just put it in the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's kind of sad that game has still sold over, what was it like? Let me check out the actual sales numbers. It's at 2.45 million. And it's one of the best-selling Switch games.
Masa, it's brilliant what they did then. You may have been pissed off at it, but it's brilliant. Yeah. They managed to sell 1-2 Switch 2.45 million times.
Yeah, exactly.
Think about that.
And I'm fairly sure that at
they
least
packaged
like
dog shit and sold it 2 million times.
Felt the same, after getting the game.
It really is. It's a staggering amount of disappointed people. Like, when you really think about it, 2.45 million disappointed people. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But let's talk about the game that was actually relevant out of these launch titles, Breath of the Wild. It became a huge success story, and right now it's actually the best-selling Zelda game if if we exclude like the remakes. Like for example, Ocarina of Time would be number one, but there's the 3DS remake. And the Metascore 98. A lot of people, a lot of reviews, including me, consider it the best game ever made. And the hype was just insane, and it was a game that truly went viral. Because a lot of like nowadays, it's really important that you have a game. It's not enough that the game is good, but you kind of have to have the game go viral on, social media platforms and, Twitch and YouTube. And then, like, Breath of the Wild, like, it truly exploded.
Everyone loves Zelda. That's something that we can generally agree on. It's both adults, people in their 40s, in their 30s, in their 20s, in their teens. But really, there wasn't a really big Zelda event kind of since Ocarina of Time. You can say that Twilight Princess was that, but it was on the GameCube and that was a failure. So people were waiting for like a big Zelda to wow them away. And particularly when people thought of Breath of the Wild, they thought, this might be the Zelda that's kind of open world and that's like Skyrim and the like. So it's everything we've been asking Nintendo for finally delivering. So it really was the Zelda that was necessary for the time. And I think that Nintendo delivered. If it had been a crappy game or if it had been just mediocre, then people would have just shunted at it. But Nintendo delivered with a really good game. And so it was ripe for the time, where people wanted a new Zelda and the Zelda happened to be excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's the most important thing because, okay, so, like, I don't remember the last time a Zelda game got, like, mediocre reviews. Like, if you think about, like, Skyward Sword, like, that actually got, like, really good reviews, and then...
But it's a mediocre game.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, a lot of people are like, well, it wasn't that great after all. Mm-hmm. Twilight Princess...
Yeah, and I think Masa, that's something that's always been the case with Nintendo. All the reviews are inflated. So you have to take every new Nintendo release with a grain of salt. Because you know that a lot of it is going to be, inflated. And I think that was the case with a lot of games, like, New Super Mario Brothers got terrific reviews. And now we can, in hindsight, say, that wasn't really a great game. Skyward Sword. It just kind of goes with the territory. Super Mario Sunshine. That was another one that was terrifically reviewed. I've known this for a long time, and it's just kind of part and parcel. Every Nintendo release will be inflated to a certain extent.
But yeah, I would say, like, the most important thing was that Breath of the Wild was actually, like, legit good, and if you think about it as a game, it was a huge risk for Nintendo, because, I mean, this is a company that has never made any, like, truly open-world games, and it's amazing that I'm not gonna say, like, my personal opinion is that, like, for me, Breath of the Wild is the best game I've ever played. Okay, it's not my favorite game, but this is also coming from someone who's not a big fan of open world games, but somehow I just, like, really got into Breath of the Wild. And it's amazing that a company not known for open world games, like, that they were able to make, like, such an amazing game.
Yeah, no, it's obviously out of left field, right? It's not something... I don't know, it's not something completely unexpected just because the Zelda franchise and the developers have the pedigree, but at the same time, yeah, the open world game has been done many times before and very well refined, so in order to see something as even more refined and innovative in many ways as Zelda was a bit of a surprise for sure.
Yeah, and I think, if I recall correctly, they brought in Monolith Soft, the people that do the Xenoblade games, to help them out with the open world technology. So they had done the Xenoblade game. So I think that, they brought in some of their teams in order to be able to make sure they got it right.
Yeah, it's actually quite crazy how I believe that, like, half of Monolith Soft, like, they had a team working on Xenoblade 2, but then, like, half the team was working on Breath of the Wild. And that's why they actually had to outsource, like, all the cutscenes from Xenoblade 2 to, like, to another company, because they just didn't have, like, the manpower to do it themselves.
Yeah, to do both.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and now the question is that, do you think that the Switch would have been as successful, like, right off the bat if it had launched with, like some other game than Breath of the Wild?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, no.
No.
I don't know. I think obviously there's only like a handful of games that could have filled that slot. I don't know if they had done Odyssey instead of Breath of the Wild, if it would have been as big. But I think it still would have been successful. But obviously, Breath of the Wild is the marquee Switch game. I think even now, I think Breath of the Wild is the game that most people think of when they think of the Nintendo Switch. So the success of the Switch was definitely tied at launch to the success of Breath of the Wild, and they nailed it.
I think Arnie, I'm gonna say it now. Zelda is more important to Nintendo than Mario. I'll say it now because the thing is, Mario is still perceived as a child's game, whereas Zelda, it really is cross-generational. So I even think that even if they had released with Odyssey, I don't think it would have performed as well. I think Zelda was just the right game at the right time.
Yeah, you have to get like the hardcore people in first before you can get the casual people. And I'm kind of pigeonholing and making it almost sound like a negative thing towards the casual gamers, but you have to have that kind of hardcore approval and the money that you get from those strong sales at first in order to then be able to continue your marketing push and continue that momentum and to be able to legitimately say this console is very popular. And you do that with Zelda. You get that hardcore element in there first with Zelda, then you can release your Mario and so on and so forth and get even more people in on it. But you have to have that foundation first. And I think Ozzy, you're right. I think you build that foundation with Zelda first and then the other first party stuff.
Yeah, so I don't think so, Masa. I think that it really was Zelda. Maybe it would have been successful, but it would probably have been a little bit slower to get going. The fact that they had such an incredible game, it really meant the difference between buying at day one or waiting at some other point down the line. At the very least, it gave Nintendo the confidence to say, okay, I think we may have hit on something. I think we did right. Yeah. Which they may have otherwise not had.
Yeah, and I would argue that, so Nintendo has, they have a few, real, benchmark games or, a few games that are, truly important. And I would say, so Wii Sports, yeah, you can say, what you want to say about the quality of the game, but that's, one of the, biggest video games of all time. Same thing with, the first Super Mario Brothers game. That was very important for the entire video games industry. But I would say you can mention Breath of the Wild in the same breath as those games. It's one of the most important releases of the history of Nintendo. So,
funnily enough, Wii Sports actually completely poops on my whole hardcore gamer theory foundation.
Yeah.
So
I think, but that's an exception.
I guess I don't know what I'm talking about.
I think Wii Sport. I don't think Wii Sport goes against your foundation because Wii Sport was a pack-in, and so I think that sort of offsets that thing. If Wii Sports was even a $30 game, I don't think you see it be as big as it is.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I think Wii Sports is the best-selling game of all time. Is it?
No, not anymore. It used to be. Yeah. It's around at 80 million. But I believe that. Okay, so you have Minecraft, but that's a bit
say no more, fam.
Yeah, but then another game which has actually like Minecraft. I'm not sure if it has actually sold that many copies, because I mean, at least at one point it was a free download. But GTA 5, the last time I checked, it was at 95 million.
Nah,
so that's Lord. Insane. Yeah.
No, but I think that Wii Sports is at 120, 130 million or something like that because it was a pack-in.
Well, so, it can't be since
it might be the best-selling game.
100 million.
Yeah.
100 million? Yeah. All right. Well, anyways.
Yeah, but
I don't know what I'm talking about.
But yeah, then the next big title that was released on the Switch was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And this is something that has been a bit of a hot topic.
Bring on the ports, baby.
Yeah, all the Wii U ports. Okay, so obviously, it was the right decision to port Mario Kart 8 over to the Switch because it has actually outsold the original game. And nowadays, a year later, almost a year and a half later, when you check out the best-selling, games charts, whether it's Europe, America, Japan, Mario Kart 8 is still there. Okay, so yeah, absolutely made sense to release it, but yeah, it's Nintendo obviously didn't stop there, and since then we have gotten numerous Wii U ports. Let me just list a few. Bayonetta 1 and 2, Hyrule Warriors, Captain Toad, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, and then there's a bunch of like third-party games like Rayman Legends,
Doom,
Lego City Undercover. So yeah, I mean, there's been a bunch of those. And personally for me, like I was one of the 10 people who actually like supported the Wii U, and I actually I own all these games on the Wii U, but still, like I don't think it's a bad thing that they are getting re-released on the Switch. But what do you guys think about all these like Wii U ports on the Switch?
I think it's good. It helps flesh out the launch lineup fairly quickly, which, as we discussed, not the greatest. And also, Wii U had such low sales numbers that this will be the first time for a lot of people experiencing these games. So I think it's perfectly fine. As far as Mario Kart 8 goes, definitely had to bring it over because it was the premier multiplayer game for that system. There wasn't really a multiplayer game that was worth talking about, I think, until Mario Kart 8 came out.
Yeah, agreed. Especially for local multiplayer.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say Splatoon 2's multiplayer, but we're kind of splitting hairs there. Mario Kart Deluxe definitely the premier multiplayer game. And I mean, as far as the Wii U ports are concerned, great idea. My only issue is paying full price for Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. That's a tough sell, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's been released already. It's an older game. And that can be applied to Hyrule Warriors as well. Like, I can't stomach that. Nah.
Well, I would say with Hyrule Warriors, it's not as bad because it does include all the DLC from both like the Wii U game and also the 3DS version. So there's like lots of extra content compared to the original version. But yeah, with Donkey Kong, I think the only thing you have is that basically like the easy mode character, whatever it was called. So yeah, it definitely shouldn't be like a $60 game.
Yeah, that's a bit rough. Maybe a little greedy, but on balance, yeah, you definitely want to have those ports, because like Arnie said, it fleshes out your relatively weak lineup. It's hard to call the lineup weak because it has Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, right? You have one of the greatest of all time, so it's kind of hard to call it weak. But you're right. It might be a little bit sparse, and it definitely helps get some muscle on those bones.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the Wii U was a failure, so it's
How many times are you going to say that, Ozzy?
Let's just stress it. I mean, so getting these games onto the Switch was necessary because a lot of people missed it. So if the Switch, is owned by a bunch of people that didn't own the Wii U, they're going to get to experience these games for the first time. So it's perfectly fine. And, like you, Paul, I don't have as big of an issue with paying full price for these games. I'm very much, look, I can say this because I have a fairly good job and, modest income and the like. So I think that, games should be held to their value. I don't think that games should necessarily be devalued because of age or time. Would I prefer that they be cheaper? Yeah, of course. But I also want to make sure that developers kind of get their revenue in order to keep on making good experiences. So I tend to think that letting games preserve their values is as a whole a benefit to the industry than a detriment.
Well, that's a very generous view. The penny pincher in me grudgingly agrees.
And also
Okay.
we have to remember that with the Switch, like the third parties weren't like actually like on board right away. So that's why the third party input outside of the indies has been like very sparse so far. And I mean, I understand that game development takes some time. So that's why, I mean, all these ports, like they, help fill in those gaps. Like, because Nintendo like themselves, like they can't, release a brand new, big title every month. So yeah, I mean, you need these while, Nintendo themselves and, the third parties are getting ready to release like more games.
Look, Masa, Nintendo could literally not release a new game for the rest of the Switch's lifetime. They could just release their whole back catalog of games on other older consoles, and it would be fine. But they don't do that. So at least this is a good first step in trying to get, their games to a greater audience. Because honestly, as Paul said, intellectual property should be the only focus of Nintendo. And they have so much untapped potential. I mean, it's not as bad as something like Sega, in which they just have, they just leave things to linger until recently. But Nintendo, they have so much that they could rely on from their prior history that they could just get by on it.
I'm still waiting on Metroid Prime 4, guys. Still.
Oh, yeah.
Still waiting.
I honestly, let me say it, I think that was the big reason why I bought a Switch, and I'm still waiting, as you said. I don't know when I'll be waiting. They'll probably release it for the next
at least
console.
Ozzy, it's not that bad, because my friend actually bought a PS3 for The Last Guardian.
Oh, nice.
And we all know how that went.
Poor guy.
Yeah. Alright, so that concludes the first part of our Nintendo Switch episode. But yeah, before we leave, Paul, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Pauls_game room.
And Arnie?
You can find me on Instagram at Region Free Gamers most of the time, or on my personal account at Welcome to the Game. It's welcome2 the game. We're also on YouTube at Region Free Gamers and Spotify now, so come check us out there as well.
Yeah.
And Ozzy?
You can find me at Shadow the Collector with periods in between. I should really change that handle because it's complicated to mention. But you can find me there.
Yeah, and you can find me
Masa?
on Instagram, and my handle is Masa_Jarvinen09. And as always, I would like to ask you guys to leave a comment on our page. And please
leave a review. Leave a review. That's what we need.
Please leave a review. Leave a rating on iTunes. And yeah, I mean, if you like the show, then just we appreciate it if you would promote the show to your friends.
All right, thanks, guys.